Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Roadmap to Implementation, part 3 of the Actionstep series, Designing Workflows. I'm Mark Greenslade. I'm one of the consulting partners to Actionstep, and I've been using Actionstep for a wee while now. And so hopefully we'll be able to impart some sort of wisdom that's useful to you over the next 45 minutes or so. I will just pop into the chat during the session. If you do have questions, please add them in just put them in the chat, and I will come back to them at the end, if not during the session. Okay, so today we're talking about designing workflows. So we'll get started. So as far as the agenda today is concerned, we're going to be starting off by doing a bit of an introduction into myself, to Verlata, who we're the consulting partner that I work for. We're going to then look at what are workflows. So, what are the various components that make them up? The process of building workflows. Now we're looking at this at I've sort of focused on a very high level, if you like, rather than a technical level. This is so that we can sort of impart some of the knowledge that we've built up over the last 10 to 15 years working with Actionstep. Some of the stuff that's not really covered off in the user guides, which of course Actionstep has quite a few of those available to you online. Now, as we look through the process of building workflows, I just want to acknowledge that there are different sizes of firms, different shapes of firms represented on the on the presentation today. So we've dealt with firms that are designing custom workflows from, of all sizes. So for very small teams that have limited resources and limited numbers of people to work on workflows, through to large teams which have lots of resources, do lots of integrations, and have lots of time to focus on this stuff. So hopefully you'll be able to pull out of the presentation the bits that are relevant to you throughout. Hopefully it's not, I haven't missed the mark too much for many of you. Okay, so after we've looked at the process of building workflows, we're going to look at some tips and tricks. So these are the things that we've learned, or I've learned over the last 10 to 15 years, some of the do's and don'ts of building workflows in Actionstep. We'll just then do a recap or conclusion over the workflow things and everything that we've discussed, just to remind you of what we've talked about, and then open the floor up for questions. So first of all, just an introduction to Verlata Consulting. So we are gold levels or gold certified consulting partners to Actionstep, which is the highest level of certification that you can have. We're a team made up of people who are technical in their nature or their expertise. So we have former IT managers from law firms that are involved, through to people like myself who used to be practice managers or office managers, legal secretaries, legal executives, who have used Actionstep in practice, along with a lot of the other products and software and services that law firms use every day. So we've got what we consider to be a really strong combination of both technical and practical expertise, and we bring that to bear when it comes to building workflows. Myself, I'm one of the directors of Verlata Consulting. I'm based in New Zealand, but we have team members all over the world, from New Zealand, Australia, Singapore, and the United Kingdom, and we work with clients all over the world and outside of those jurisdictions as well. I've been using Actionstep for 15 years, first as a practice manager for my partner's law firm. So she's a family lawyer based in New Zealand, and at its peak we had a team of 10 people that were using Actionstep and getting the most out of it at the time. Of course, Actionstep has changed a lot, as you can imagine, in the last 15 years. So things are quite different now to when they started, when we started with them 15 years ago. So in terms of the designing of workflows, I decided to divide the presentation up into three parts. The first being, actually looking at what is a workflow. So what are the bits and pieces that make up a workflow, particularly inside Actionstep? Then to look at how you build them, and that's really around what the best way of building them is. And then thirdly, to look at the tips and tricks. So what are the things that you do and don't do, the sort of mistakes that we've made and learnt from over the years, and the things that work better or not so well in different situations. So what are workflows? Workflows are more than just a categorization of what you do. What we see often with clients when we first start working with them is their first instinct is to separate all their different matters, the different types of work they do, into different categorizations. In the New Zealand context, that's often related to their professional indemnity insurance, where they're required to report at the end of each year how many cases or files, matters that have they opened of each different type of work, how much revenue have they generated, that sort of thing. And that seems to be, a nice, easy, natural starting point for people when they're thinking about matter types and workflows. But really, workflows are more than just a categorization of what you do. They are obviously for each of the matters that you work on. You've got stages of work, which can be represented inside Actionstep. As you work through those stages of work, you've got collections of data. So your workflow in Actionstep can be involve custom data tables, the different people or parties that are involved in your matter. You have different communication at different stages, and that can be both internal and external. So we have clients that are, particularly in larger teams, where as a matter progresses, different people in the team are being notified of where things are at, and different people are then being allocated tasks as we move through the work. Your communication, of course, can be divided up into emails, letters, and any of the other precedents and documents that you use. With some of the advanced integrations that we're starting to see now, we are starting to see connections through to external software providers, which allow for communication via other tools that might be better suited to, say, mass communication or communication to other pieces of software, such as the linking through to getting getting ratings or for customers into your firm inside the say Google search or Google review tools, for example. And of course, we also have automation. So one of the big things that attracts people to Actionstep, and certainly it was one of the reasons that we first started using it 15 years ago, was document automation, but also task automation and email automation. So Actionstep has some very powerful tools which allow you to generate your documents automatically, generate your emails automatically, and save a lot of time and effort. And that's often a really good starting point for people when they're looking at workflows. And one of the things I wanted to really emphasize today was what you get out of a good workflow. So there's a number of things that you can achieve. So obviously improvements in your client service. So doing the right things at the right time and in the right way. So often when we're working with firms, we'll see variations across different different teams within a practice. The different partners will do things different ways. So Actionstep and workflow construction is a way of sort of starting to get some consistency in the way that clients are looked after across your practice. Some guidance, so making it easy for your team to do the right thing. So that's particularly useful for people who have just joined the team or joined your practice, your juniors, and so it just allows them or guides them easily into taking the right actions at the right time. Another thing that you get out of your good workflows is productivity. So obviously getting things done quicker, and that's just a reference, I guess, back to the documents and email production. And the other thing which we think is useful from workflows is compliance. So making sure that you're meeting your regulatory obligations, and obviously those will those will vary around the world. In New Zealand in particular, and I know it's true also in the United Kingdom, we have anti-money laundering regulations, privacy regulations, that we can use workflows to make sure that the firm is meeting those obligations. And often those obligations are not something that people choose to do or people particularly enjoy doing, but nonetheless they are very important for the firm in order to reduce their risk. So workflows can be very useful for that. So workflows are made up of a lot of things, and really the key message here is don't just treat them as a categorization. Make sure that you are identifying what you get out of a workflow and what's really important for you. So what I'm going to do now is just talk about sort of some of the key things that we've identified useful in getting successful workflow design achieved. So first thing is to build your design team. Now, I appreciate that for some of you in smaller firms, having a team as such to assist with workflow development is not going to be particularly achievable. But we'll talk a wee bit more about that at the end of this slide. So I think it's really important that you have a group of people involved in your design. The reason for that, of course, is that you get to bounce ideas off each other. No one person is the repository of all of your knowledge, and that's certainly the true for us. We have a team of people, and we enjoy bouncing ideas off each other and challenging each other. And that's often where you get the best results. So if you're going to build a design team, who are the people that you need to include in that? So the first point I've made there is the people who are most affected. So the people who are actually driving the work, that are doing the tasks that are allocated within a workflow or producing the documents. It's sometimes, I have to say this very carefully, that you will have partners or the head lawyers in a team will dominate design decisions or designing workflows, but they're often not the people who are most affected by those decisions. So while it's important to include them as leaders of the practice, it's also important to include the people who are most affected, who are most on a day-to-day basis by the workflows. The sorts of people that I'd include, or the roles, if you like, the party types, shall we say, for a design team, include a mediator or leader, so somebody who can keep the discussion on track and make sure that you stay focused. The annoying person who keeps asking, but why? Now, traditionally, that's been me when I've been working in teams, so I'm constantly asking, but why? And one of the things that people tend to get a bit frustrated or can get frustrated with me is that I don't kind of accept the, oh, but we've always done it, because we've always done it so that way as an answer. I really like to drive through to why are we doing stuff? Why are we, building a document or sending a document out at a particular time, so that we can understand the purpose of the task or the particular item that we're looking at, and drive through to better solutions or possibly better solutions or better ways of doing things. You always need someone who's going to get things done. So it's important to obviously have people who can bounce ideas off each other, but then someone needs to turn that into reality. And all the thinking and work and design work that you do is no good unless someone actually gets into the back end of Actionstep and implements the changes, the workflow that you want. I've identified a skeptic. So it's a person who really kind of doesn't really see the purpose of workflows. Well, we've done things perfectly well for however many years we've been using. I'm not sure why we need to change. The reason for that is that they're often the people that will put the handbrake on the more extreme ideas. They'll also a key influencer when it's time to release workflows out into the wider practice. So they're the people that if others can see that they've been brought along in the process, they can become very important for getting engagement from other skeptics within the practice. And someone that everyone else listens to. So obviously, once you release your workflows into reality or into your practice, you want everyone to engage with them. And so having somebody that everyone looks up to, that everyone else listens to or respects, can be a really important part of your design team. Now, I appreciate, as just referencing back to one of my initial comments, was that smaller practices are not necessarily going to have enough people that you can fill every role. And that's a reality for a lot of you. And in that case, I would call on you to have a think about Edward de Bono's 6 hats. So you may not have a individual person to fill each of the roles that are critical for you, but have a think about swapping hats from time to time and taking different stances and looking at things differently so that you can do your best to replicate the makeup of the team to get the most out of it. So once you've got a team built and you're ready to start building your workflows, then one of the things that we've learned is that it's really important to give them some starting points, give the team something to work with. Giving a team, I've learned from bitter experience that if we give a team a blank piece of paper, it takes a long time to get started. So it's much better to give them something to start with. Now, that might be an initial design. So if you look back to that diagram I had before, you might just map out a few quick points on a piece of paper or a workflow, or it might be just starting with all of the letters and applications, etc., depending on your meta type that are relevant. So the documentation. It may be the way you do things now. So map out what you're doing right now and then give that to them to critique and pull apart and work with as a starting point. So give them something concrete that the team can relate to. That makes it far more practical. They get into the process of designing workflows much more quickly, and you will achieve results more quickly from it. Give them permission to fail, and I think this is really important, is that people have to, or the teams have to be able to make mistakes when they're building workflows to try things out and see if they work or not. If you don't give them permission to fail, then it's less likely that they will succeed. It's less likely that they will get to the really creative solutions that may seem completely out of the box, that completely just wouldn't make sense in a law firm. So I think it's really important to give your design team or the people working on your workflows the permission to try things and to have that go wrong without any sort of long-term negative repercussions. And give them an endpoint. So what's the purpose of your workflow? What are you trying to achieve from the workflow design that you're working through? Is it to improve your client service, or is it to reduce your risk? What are the key things that you want to achieve? And those things could differ from different matter types or different parts of the process that a client, from when you start working with a client right through to when you've got them fully onboarded, you've completed that first phase of work with the client, and then you're moving on to on maintaining a relationship on an ongoing basis. So different workflows may well have different goals. Just a reminder, if I presume everyone can see the chat. If you do have any chat, please, any questions, please do put them into the chat function and we will come back to them. So moving on from there, once you've got your design team built, you've given them something to work with, they go into designing workflows. And as I said at the beginning, I'm not going to really talk too much about the technical side of Actionstep and how to do that. There are lots of resources online within the user guide for that. And of course, you can engage consulting partners to assist where you need it. But one of the things that I like to do, and I tend to be an overthinker, so this is something that I've sort of come to through a bit of experience with working through workflows and other things within practice, is that you need to just get on with it and get the workflow built and out and into the marketplace per se to get it tested out. Now, it's not going to be right first time. I've yet to see a workflow be released into a practice where it's being heavily customized and it being perfect the first time it goes out. And you'll get to perfect, or you'll get close to perfect much quicker if you cycle through iterations. So if you get the workflow out into the practice, get it being used, find the things that you've missed, find all the fish hooks, the things that could be done better. You fail fast, you fix it, you move on, and you get into a process or a cycle of continually improving. One of the things that we do when we're bringing clients into Actionstep is that we fast track that process a bit through using, prior to releasing live through the whole practice, we do a phase of what we call user acceptance testing, where we've designed custom workflows alongside our customers. We put it into a testing environment, then we open it up to a small group of people, give them a set of tasks and things to try, and then they get to test out the workflow, and then we can improve on it before it goes into general release. So if possible, get yourself a testing environment and give it a crack. Get it out there, get people who are going to be using the workflow in practice using it, so that they can give you the feedback that they need to get it better. Another thing that we've noticed is that it's really important with change, as new workflow design often involves, is to create some ownership and engagement. So that's both with your design team, so giving them real control. So I think one of the most disheartening things that I've seen with workflows, with lots of projects, is where a team has put a lot of work into something. They've spent many hours researching things, building things, testing them out for themselves, and then someone from outside of the team comes along and says, no, that's not going to work. We're going to change that. We're not going to do it that way at all, sort of thing. So it's not that other people's input is not important, but the design team needs to have some real control over what they release into the general practice or the practice of the firm. If they don't, they're going to become disheartened, and you're not going to get engagement next time around. Give them the resources they need. So for a lot of firms where we see failure around design teams is giving them time. So if you want them to do this work, you've got to give them the time to do it, not just expect that they'll work through lunches and they'll do extra hours and all that sort of thing. So give people the space and the time and the resources to engage other people as needed to be able to achieve the job. And that's obviously giving them resources, giving them time reflects the importance that you're placing on the workflow as workflow design as a practice, and gives them confidence that things will be done and they will be able to achieve some meaningful change. You also need to create buy-in from your whole team. So you've got your design team, and they will get intimately engaged in workflows. They will understand it, and they'll buy into it. They'll get really excited about it, and then they'll launch it. And if they've launched it into a practice that has no idea what's going on. It's a complete surprise to them that this workflow stuff is happening, or they kind of vaguely knew it was going on, but they didn't really appreciate what was going to happen when, how it was going to affect them. Then that team is going to be disengaged, and they're going to be suspicious of what you're doing. You really need to get some buy-in from them. So the first thing I'd suggest is that you communicate. So let people know what's happening well in advance. Give them some updates as you progress through the workflow design, and make sure that they understand what's going on. And then train them. So give them plenty of training, plenty of support to start using your new workflows, particularly where you've got significant change in the way that you do things. The other thing I think is really important right from the beginning is to give your whole team influence. So give them some feedback loops. So if you're doing what I suggested early on, where you're launching it out into the practice, your workflow, and you're allowing mistakes to be made, getting them fixed, improving things constantly, you have to make sure that those feedback loops are in place for the whole team, so the whole team gets that opportunity to feedback. And there's two aspects to that. One is to get the feedback is obviously important, but also to show the team that you want their feedback, I think is really important as well. Oftentimes we find that you will put feedback loops in place. You may not get a lot of engagement, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that hasn't been effectual. It will give people confidence that you will listen to them at the right time. So the key message there is to create some ownership and engagement from both the design team and the wider team as you're releasing your workflows out, or as you're designing them and then releasing them out, to make sure that you get that buy-in that you need for your workflows to succeed. And so I wanted to end or do the last little bit before we go into conclusion and questions, or summary and questions, is, what are some of the things that we've learned over the years while we're building workflows? So one of the first things is don't make everything mandatory. It's very tempting to say, oh, we know we have to have this, and we have to have that, and we have to have that party identified, and we have to have that piece of data. There's a really careful balancing act to be made between making everything mandatory, or making things mandatory through your workflows, and making things easy through your workflows, so easy for the user. I lean to the making things easy, so give them the opportunity to enter things, but be careful not to force them to enter things. If you do that too much and you miss the mark on it, you will end up with garbage. So people will just put stuff in there to get past the mandatory nature of whatever you happen to be doing, or you're asking them to do, I should say. Make sure it makes sense. So what I mean by that is that we do see workflows being built where, we know we need the vendor for a conveyancing matter, for example. So we're going to make sure that's in the start step. So one of the first things you've got to do is put the vendor in. But the people who are opening your matters for you, that are using those workflows, may not know who the vendor is at that point in time. So make sure that where you are requiring or offering for data to be entered, or parties to be entered into the system, or accounting settings to be, rates to be updated, whatever it is that you're automating or driving, that the information is available, that it makes sense. Remember also there's more than one way to do things, and which way you use will, the strength of those things will be, or strengths and benefits and weaknesses of those will be different for different situations, and even for different teams. So what I mean by that is, for example, you can send information out via a document template or a precedent, but you can also do it via an email template. So which is the most effective way for your team and in that particular situation? So don't be afraid of exploring different ways of doing things to achieve the same thing. In that case, communication, either via email or document, or even by SMS or text message. Map things out, and it sort of goes back to the giving the team something to hang their hat on. So my partner, when she first started mapping out workflows, she had big, massive sheets of paper, big A1 sheets, and we had a stack of those sitting in a room in her office where she had sat down and done all the workflows for that. And really mapped things out in a lot of detail. You can use online products such as Miro, which is a software as a service product, which allows you to do workflows, and it provides you with nice templates to use, and you can map things out using Miro, or other like PowerPoint even would do the same thing. And then you can share those with people and get input from in different ways. And even sticky notes on a wall. And I quite like sticky notes because they can be easily moved around, picked up and put in a different place and shuffled about far more easily than, say, an A1 sheet of paper. So if you don't want to go to sort of a technological solution such as Miro, then sticky notes on a wall is a good way to go. Or if you don't want to put it on the wall and damage the paint, I'm sure you'll be able to find some other surface for your sticky notes. And I've already said this a wee bit, but just rinse and repeat. Like, get your workflows out there, try things out, pull the design team, collect your feedback, pull the design team together, rinse your workflows and repeat. So, get them out there, use them, change them, iterative change. It's really important to getting things right and to getting the most out of your workflows. The other thing is to think outside the box. So one of the things that we like to do is make sure that when we're working with clients who are customizing their workflows, that they don't just think about doing the same things better. So let's just make sure that all the documents that we send out, we're just going to send those out, but we're going to do it in a more productive way because we've used precedents and we've linked them to stages and steps and tasks inside Actionstep. Try and find some things that you can do better. So are there some better ways of communicating? Going back, can you replace your precedents with an email template, for example? If it's important to you that you want to boost your client service or improve the way that clients come into the practice, you engage people, what other bits of software are out there, such as, and then for us, there's a lot of emphasis on anti-money laundering, bringing clients in, identifying them properly, making that experience as friendly as possible. It's a compliance issue, but it's something that we have to do. So can we make that process actually a bit more fun, a bit more engaging for clients than just, hey, we're really sorry, we've got to do this, and so we're going to, we have to force you to do these things. We're really apologetic about that. Try and make it fun, do it better for clients. So think outside the box when you're building your workflows. So in conclusion, we think, the workflows inside Actionstep are a really good chance to delight everyone you work with. So not just your clients, but also the other parties to your matters. So the real estate agents you might work with, or the lawyers on the other side, the vendors, if you're acting for a purchaser, or the applicant if you're acting for the defendant, or it's possibly not a good example, but hopefully you get the picture, is that everyone internally and externally to the practice can gain a lot from workflows and from what you do with them. Workflows are more than just a categorization of what you do. Use them to improve your client service. Make sure you understand what it is you want to achieve, whether it's making things easier, getting things done quicker, or reducing your risk. To develop your workflows, build yourself a design team, give them a starting point, the goals and resources that they need, give them permission to fail and authority, which may mean, of course, that the partners have to give up some control, and that may or may not be achievable, or it may be achievable to different levels depending on the personalities of your partners in your practice. Get your workflows into the real world sooner rather than later. Just ready, fire, aim. Just really get them out there. Once you've hit a few targets and you're slightly off, you'll know how to adjust to get the next one better and right. Generate engagement with the workflows and the whole team. So let them know what's happening, communicate with them, get them excited, listen to them, and give them the ability to influence the process at the right times. So in our tips and tricks, make things easier, but be careful with mandatory. Make sure that your workflows make sense from a pragmatic or practical perspective. Remember, there is more than one way to do things, so explore different options. Map things out on a piece of paper using technology, however you want to do it. Test it and test your workflows in the real world, and then rinse and repeat. And just remember, think outside the box. Don't just do the same things better, do some better things. So I'm Mark from Verlata Consulting. Hopefully you've found that useful. And please feel free to ask any questions. So I can see some people, a couple of people dropping off, but no questions as such. I've got one question. Will there be a part 4? I'm sorry, that's a question that's best left to Actionstep. I'm really not able to answer that, but I will make sure that somebody sends you out some information with regard to the workflows, and you will get an email with a copy of the recording. Oh, sorry, yes, there is a part 4. There we go. And you will get an email from Actionstep as well. Okay, are there any other questions? So one other thing I thought about, just while you think, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. One of the things that we often see with frustrations with firms that have workflows is don't forget your bailout option, if you like. So we'd like to think that we're perfect, and that as soon as we start taking our client on board, we're going to see them, 100% of them, all the way through to the end of a matter. That's not the case. We all know that. You will lose some of your clients along the way for various reasons. Just remember to make sure you've got an out. So in the workflows in Actionstep, you will always have a close step at the end of the project or end of the matter. So it's important that if you think there are key points at which a matter may fail, so for example, on the purchase of a property, there isn't sufficient funds to make the bid, or the price gets too high and then the purchase doesn't go through, then make sure you've got the ability to jump to your close step. That if you can't, it gets really frustrating. So for whoever wants to close that matter in Actionstep, they've got to go bing, 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 bing through all of the steps that get them through to close, which may involve, tasks, templates, etc., that they've got to skip through, which you don't really want to force them to do. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay, we're not seeing any other questions come through. So I think we'll leave it there. Last chance. Okay, great. Well, thanks very much, guys. Thanks for attending today. I'm Mark from Verlata. If you do need to contact us, we're on our website is www.verlata.com, and you will get some communication and an email after the presentation with a copy of the recording. Okay, thanks very much. See ya.